At my daughter's high school graduation, my husband handed me divorce papers tucked into the program. "I'm upgrading," he whispered, smirking at his 25-year-old secretary sitting in the front row. I held back tears during the ceremony, but later that night, I sent a letter that would shatter his perfect new life before it even started. I was sitting in the second row of the gym at North Ridge High School in Fort Collins, Colorado, trying to focus on my daughter, Lily, as she walked in with her graduating class. Parents were crying, clapping, waving. I should have been doing the same. Instead, I was staring at the glossy navy blue program shaking in my hands. Because tucked inside it, folded twice, like he'd put real thought into the presentation, were divorce papers. My husband, Mark, had slipped them there right before the ceremony started. I felt the corner of the program dig into my palm as I tried to breathe. I whispered, "Are you serious right now?" without looking at him. He didn't even pretend to feel guilty. He just leaned toward me, his cologne sharp and unfamiliar, and whispered, "I'm upgrading." Then he nodded toward the front row. That's when I saw her, his secretary, 25. Blonde hair curled perfectly, a dress way too tight for a high school graduation, sitting next to Mark's mother as if she belonged there. As if she'd earned that seat. My stomach dropped so fast I thought I might actually throw up. I didn't cry, though. I refused. Not here. Not today. Not while my daughter was lining up to get her diploma and look out into the audience expecting to see both her parents smiling. So I swallowed it. Every ounce of heartbreak, rage, humiliation. I forced my face to stay neutral, even when Mark casually placed his hand on his thigh like he expected me to admire the view of his new life. Even when his phone buzzed in his lap, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw her name light up the screen. During the entire ceremony, I clapped when everyone else clapped. I stood when everyone else stood. I smiled when Lily spotted me, even though my throat felt like it was closing. When it was over, Mark told Lily he had a work thing and couldn't go to dinner with us. Then he walked straight to the front row, kissed his secretary on the cheek right in front of our daughter, and the two of them left together. His mother followed them like it was the most normal thing she'd ever seen. Lily looked at me with this confused little wrinkle between her eyebrows. "Mom, what's going on?" I told her we'd talk later. She didn't push. She just hugged me tighter than she has in years. That night, after I dropped her off at her friend's grad party and finally had the house to myself, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at those divorce papers. The signature lines were blank. He expected me to just sign and disappear quietly, like I was nothing more than an old file he needed to close. But Mark made a mistake. A big one. Because there was something he didn't know. Something I'd kept to myself for months. Something he never bothered to notice. Too obsessed with his upgrade to see what was happening right under his nose. And when I finished writing the letter I'd been drafting in my head since the moment he whispered that disgusting word at me, I realized it wasn't anger guiding my hand anymore. It was certainty. I sealed the envelope. Tomorrow morning, he would open it, and his perfect new life would start collapsing before it even had a chance to begin. Mark and I met in Denver when I was 24 and stupidly optimistic. I was working as a dental assistant back then, saving every penny to eventually go back to school for hygiene. He was already working at the real estate firm he still pretends he built from the ground up, even though his father handed it to him with a bow. He was charming in that smooth, confident way men get when things have always come easy for them. He bought drinks for everyone, remembered tiny details about people, and made you feel like you were the most important person in the room when he looked at you. I didn't realize until years later that he did that because he liked the feeling of being adored, not because he cared. We married fast, too fast. I see that now. But at the time, it felt like the right move. He made promises about stability and a good life and how we'd be a team. I didn't grow up with much, so hearing someone talk about a future with certainty felt comforting. The first crack showed up during my pregnancy with Lily. Mark worked late constantly. I found a text from a coworker of his, nothing explicit, but too flirty to be innocent. When I confronted him, he acted offended I would even ask. He said I was being hormonal and paranoid. I was young, I believed him. After Lily was born, I threw myself into being a mom. Mark threw himself into his job. He loved Lily, sure, but not in the hands-on way that I imagined a father would. He bought her things. He showed up for pictures, but everything else, that was me. Over the years, I got used to doing things alone: doctor's appointments, school conferences, middle-of-the-night fevers, birthdays he almost missed. But he always had a way of smoothing things over with gifts or apologies that sounded rehearsed but polished enough to pass. And I was afraid of being a single mom with no degree and a patchy work history. So I stayed. I told myself things would get better. Looking back, I think he sensed my insecurity and counted on it. He knew I wouldn't leave. He knew I'd tolerate things. He knew he could cheat in small ways: emotional affairs, flirty messages, mysterious work trips, and I'd forgive him because I didn't want to upend Lily's life. But over the last year, something changed. It wasn't dramatic, it was small, subtle things. He started dressing differently, started going to the gym a lot, started hiding his phone, started acting lighter, almost giddy. I asked him at one point if there was someone else. He laughed and told me I needed a hobby. That laugh still makes my skin crawl. Then 3 months ago, one of the partners at his firm pulled me aside at a charity event. He looked uncomfortable, like he wasn't sure if he should say anything. But after a minute, he told me Mark had been getting too close to his new secretary. Young, impressionable, and according to him, not very discreet. I went cold all over. But I didn't confront Mark that time, because there was something else I'd been keeping to myself, something I'd discovered on my own around the same time. And I realized if I kept quiet, if I stayed calm and patient, I could use what I knew when the time was right. I never expected the right time would be my daughter's graduation. I never expected he'd be cruel enough to blindside me in public. But once he handed me those papers like he was gifting me a favor, my hesitation disappeared. I knew exactly what I needed to do. And that letter, the one waiting on his kitchen counter right now, it wasn't just a response, it was the first domino. The morning after Lily's graduation, I woke up before the sun. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mark smirk. I heard him whisper, "I'm upgrading." I saw that girl. God, she looked like a child, sitting where I should have been. I made coffee just for something to hold. Something warm, something steady. I kept checking my phone. Nothing. No text from Mark, no call, not even a fake attempt to talk. That was when it really hit me. He didn't expect a reaction because he thought I didn't matter anymore. He thought I'd just sign the papers, hand him everything he wanted, and fade out of his life like an old employee he no longer needed. Around 9 a.m., he finally texted, "Mark, we should make this smooth. No need to drag this out. I'll come by tonight to get the signed pages." I stared at that message for a long time. Smooth. As if the way he delivered the divorce wasn't designed to humiliate me, as if the timing wasn't intentional, as if he wasn't trying to rewrite the entire story so he looked like the mature one and I looked like the emotional wife who couldn't handle change. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The letter was already sitting on the kitchen counter in that house he bought for us, but rarely lived in emotionally. I pictured him walking in after work, all confident and invincible, probably planning to bring her with him. Maybe he wanted her to watch me sign my own exit. I wouldn't put it past him. He'd see the envelope first. He'd pick it up, probably expecting some pathetic plea or emotional meltdown. But what was inside that letter wasn't begging. It was truth. The kind of truth he could not talk his way out of. The kind that ripped backing off walls and let light in where he never expected it. And the best part? I didn't lie. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't twist anything. All I did was tell the truth, because for months I'd been collecting it. Every late-night business dinner, every gym trip that didn't make sense, every credit card charge, every little comment from his coworkers he assumed I wasn't sharp enough to catch, every inconsistency, every slip. And the thing he never knew, the part he didn't see coming, was the person who'd helped me piece everything together. Not a friend. Not a detective, not some suspicious coworker, someone even closer. Someone he trusted. Someone he underestimated even more than he underestimated me. By noon, I still hadn't heard anything. No call, no angry message. Not even a passive-aggressive paragraph about being adults. That silence made my skin prickle, because Mark never stayed quiet when he felt in control. He stayed quiet when he felt cornered. Late that afternoon, Lily came home early from her friend's place. She walked in wearing her oversized graduation hoodie, threw her bag by the door, and asked, "Did Dad come by?" I told her no. Then she looked at me with this softness in her eyes I hadn't seen since she was little. Mom, something happened today. My stomach clenched. What do you mean? She shifted uncomfortably like she wasn't sure if she should say it. Dad called me at noon. He wanted to talk, but he sounded weird, like scared. I've never heard him sound like that. I felt my palms go cold. What did he say? She hesitated. He asked if I'd been home this morning, she said. I told him no. And then he said he needed to ask me something in person. In person, I repeated. Why? She swallowed hard. Because, she whispered, he said someone told him something about you, something big. And he wanted to know if it was true. My heart hammered against my ribs. He wouldn't tell me what it was, she said. But whatever you wrote in that letter, I think it hit him. Hard. I didn't answer her. I couldn't. Because she didn't know yet. She didn't know what I'd discovered. She didn't know who had helped me discover it. She didn't know why Mark was suddenly scared enough to want to see her face to face. But she would. Soon. And when she did, her view of her father, the man she'd spent her whole life trying to impress, would change in a way she could never unsee. Mark didn't show up that night like he said he would. Instead, around 6 p.m., I got a text from an unknown number. Unknown, you told him. We need to talk. I knew immediately who it was. Her, the secretary, Alyssa. I almost deleted the message. But something told me not to. Something cold and steady inside me said, let her talk. Let every ugly truth come to the surface. Before I could decide what to do next, my phone buzzed again, this time with Lily's ringtone. Mom, she said, breathless, Dad just showed up at my friend Megan's house. He's freaking out. He keeps asking if I've talked to you about anything. He made Megan's mom really uncomfortable. Is he okay? I asked carefully. I don't know, she said. He looks shaken, like something's seriously wrong. I inhaled slowly. Good. After we hung up, the unknown number texted again. Alyssa, please, if you're home, I'm coming over. I didn't know he was married at first. I swear, I didn't know it was like this. That was a lie, I already knew that much. But I also knew she wasn't the real villain. She was a symptom of his arrogance, his pattern. I didn't respond, but 20 minutes later, there was a knock at my door. I opened it just enough to see her standing there, perfect curls, expensive shoes, a face full of makeup that couldn't hide how red her eyes were. She looked nothing like she did at the graduation. She looked like a kid who'd just seen something she couldn't process. She pushed her way inside before I could say a word. Why didn't you tell me sooner? She demanded. I stared at her. Tell you what? She froze. That's when I knew she didn't actually know what Mark read in that letter. Interesting. He wouldn't show me, she said, pacing. He just said everything was ruined, that I ruined it. That you, she jabbed a finger in my direction, must have been spying on him for months. I said nothing. She ran her hands through her hair. He's losing it. He kept asking if I knew about. She cut herself off. Knew about what? I asked. She clamped her mouth shut, and that confirmed everything. He told you something, I said, taking a step closer. Something he didn't want anyone else to know, something he thought would stay buried. Her face crumpled, and she sank onto the couch. I should have left when I found out, she whispered. I tried to, but he said he'd fix it. He said no one would ever find out, that he had it handled. I felt a slow, cold burning rise through my chest. So you did know, she nodded. And you stayed. Another nod. I let out a long, steady breath. She looked up at me with this mix of fear and guilt that almost made me feel something like pity almost. I didn't want to be part of this, she whispered. But I didn't think you'd ever know. I didn't think anyone would. I didn't answer her, because part of me was replaying the last few months, the secret meetings, the strange phone calls, the sudden panic he seemed to feel any time the mail arrived before he could grab it. Pieces were snapping together in my mind like magnets. What did he tell you? I asked again, voice low. She swallowed, opened her mouth, closed it. Finally she whispered, he said there was a folder, a file. Something he thought he'd destroyed years ago. Something that could ruin him. My heart thudded painfully. I already knew about the file. In fact, I had it. It was the thing I'd discovered 3 months ago. The thing I'd quietly made copies of. The thing that made everything click. But Alyssa didn't know that. And neither did Mark. Until he opened that letter. I stared at her for a long moment. Then she whispered the part that wasn't just a twist, but a punch to the lung. He told me you weren't the only woman, she said softly. He said there were others, before me, during your marriage. A lot of them, but the reason he panicked today wasn't about any affair. She looked up with wide, terrified eyes. It was about what happened in Phoenix. My blood turned to ice. She looked down at her shaking hands. He told me he thought it was gone forever. I blinked. What was? I whispered. She met my eyes. The girl, she said, the one he paid to keep quiet. My throat closed. A girl, paid off, Phoenix. My hands went numb. And Alyssa's voice broke as she finished. He told me she was 17. I didn't speak for a full minute. Alyssa sat on my couch, hands shaking, waiting for me to explode or collapse or scream anything. But all I felt was this heavy, hollow calm. It wasn't shock. It was confirmation. The final piece clicking into place. Because 3 months ago, I'd found something that didn't make sense. A thin, half-burned manila envelope wedged behind old tax folders in Mark's home office. I only found it because I was looking for Lily's birth certificate, and the drawer got stuck. When I reached back to unjam it, the envelope came loose and fell onto the floor. Inside were copies of wire transfers from 12 years ago, all sent to the same girl. All sent from a personal account he'd kept hidden. One of them labeled relocation support, another medical assistance. The last one, final payment. The dates put him in Phoenix on a week he'd told me he was at a real estate conference. I didn't understand it back then. It was awful and confusing, but I didn't know the whole story. I didn't know her age. I didn't know who she was to him. I didn't know why he paid her. I only knew it was something he desperately wanted hidden, so I scanned everything. All of it, then I put the originals back exactly where I found them. Later, I started digging. Quietly, slowly, carefully. I didn't want to accuse him without knowing the truth. But the truth didn't surface until tonight, when Alyssa said the word 17. My mouth went dry. You knew this whole time, I finally whispered. She shook her head so fast her curls bounced. No. Not until he said your letter mentioned Phoenix. I swear I didn't know how old she was. He just told me it was a situation he took care of. Something from before you had Lily. Before Lily. Meaning he'd been cheating on me even earlier than I realized. Meaning he'd been capable of things I never imagined. I took a slow breath. And what exactly did you take care of with him? Her voice cracked. I didn't help, I swear. I only found out a month into whatever we were doing. And by then, he said it was handled, that no one would ever know. And you stayed. She burst into tears. I was stupid. I thought he said he loved me. He said he was leaving you anyway. I know how it sounds. It sounded like everything I'd suspected for years. Mark collected women he thought he could manipulate. Women who wouldn't question him. Women who'd believe the version of events he fed them. But now that version was crumbling. Fast. I sat down across from her, feeling the weight of the moment settle into something sharp and electric. Alyssa, I said quietly, listen carefully. I need you to tell me everything he told you, every detail about Phoenix, every comment, every slip, every word you can remember. She nodded, wiping her cheeks. It wasn't just the girl, she whispered. He said there were people involved, people he didn't want angry. He said they'd bury him if anything came out. She swallowed. He said they'd bury all of us. The room went still. People, plural, not just the girl, not just Mark. Something bigger. I leaned back, letting the information settle like dust around us. Then I asked the question I'd been circling since she walked into my house. Why did you come here? I said. Instead of running straight to him, her voice trembled. Because I think he's going to blame this on me, she whispered. He said someone close to him betrayed him, and I know he's paranoid enough to twist this around. I don't want him coming after me. I stared at her for a long moment. Then I asked quietly, did he say who he thought betrayed him? She hesitated. And then, with a tiny, terrified nod, she whispered, he said he thinks it was his daughter. My heart stopped. Lily, Lily. I stood up so fast the room spun. He thinks Lily found that file. Alyssa shook her head. He said, someone in my own house stabbed me in the back. And then he asked me if I thought your daughter was the type to snoop. A cold, razor-edged rage slid down my spine. He wasn't just scared, he was unraveling. And when men like Mark unraveled, they didn't fall quietly. They lashed out. They blamed. They punished. Alyssa whispered, he kept saying he had to fix it before it was too late. My stomach clenched. What does that mean? I asked. I don't know, she whispered. But he sounded dangerous. I felt everything inside me shift, fear sharpening into strategy, anger crystallizing into clarity. I knew what Mark was capable of now. And I knew something else. If I didn't act fast, if I didn't outmaneuver him, He'd burn everything in his path to protect himself, including our daughter. Retaliation wasn't optional anymore. It was necessary, and I already knew exactly who I needed to contact next. Someone who could help me pull the trigger on the real plan. The plan I'd been building quietly for weeks. The plan Mark never saw coming. The moment Alyssa left, I locked the door behind her and leaned my forehead against it, trying to steady my breathing. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from adrenaline, from certainty, from the feeling of gears finally clicking into place. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a number I never expected to use again. Detective Harper. We'd met years ago, back when Lily was in middle school and her bike got stolen from the rec center. He'd been kind, patient, way too competent for the tiny messes he handled in Fort Collins. Last year, he'd transferred to a special investigations unit that sometimes handled multi-state cases. I knew he'd remember me. He remembered everyone, but before I could press call, my phone lit up with Lily's name. I answered immediately. "Are you home yet?" "No," she said, voice tight. "Mom, Dad just left Megan's. He was acting weird. Like looking around for someone, asking questions that freaked Megan's mom out." My stomach clenched. "What kind of questions?" "He kept asking if anyone had been in our house, if anyone had been in his office, if I ever touched his files." She took a shaky breath. "Mom, he asked if you ever talked to the police." My fingertips went cold. "He's spiraling," I whispered. "Should I come home?" she asked. "No," my voice snapped sharper than I meant. "Stay where you are, do not come home tonight." "Mom, please, Lily, just listen to me. Stay with your friends, I'll pick you up tomorrow morning." There was a long silence, and then she said, softer, "Is Dad in trouble?" I closed my eyes. "Yes," she didn't argue after that. When the call ended, I finally dialed Detective Harper. He picked up on the second ring. "This is Harper." "It's me," I said. "We need to talk." "It's urgent." He paused. "You okay?" "No," I told him everything. Not the emotions, not the cheating, just the facts, the Phoenix transfers, the hidden files, the age, the fear, the sudden panic. The people Mark claimed could bury him. Harper listened without interrupting, not once. When I finished, he exhaled slowly. "I'm going to be straight with you," he said. "If what you're saying is accurate, this isn't just misconduct. This is serious criminal territory." "And it sounds like he's scared someone found." "A body?" I asked, voice barely a whisper. Another heavy pause. "I didn't say that," Harper replied. "But I've worked enough cases to know when a man feels threatened by the truth coming out. And your husband is acting like someone who knows exactly how much he stands to lose." I swallowed. "So what do I do?" "I need every document you have," he said. "Right now, can you bring it to the station?" "I can." Just as I grabbed the folder from where I'd hidden it, my phone buzzed again. Mark, calling, I didn't answer. I let it ring until it stopped. Then it buzzed again. This time it was a text. "Mark, we need to talk now, it's about Lily." My chest tightened painfully. Then another message popped up. "Mark, I know what you did." I stared at those words, pulse hammering in my ears. But before I could react, another message appeared, shorter this time, more terrifying. "Mark, you weren't supposed to find out about Phoenix." Neither was she. I felt the blood drain from my face. Neither was she. He didn't mean Alyssa. He didn't mean the girl in Phoenix. He meant Lily. Something inside me snapped in that moment, clean, decisive, cold. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about protection. I grabbed my keys and the file and headed toward the door, already planning exactly how I was going to move, who I was going to call, where I was going to position myself so he couldn't corner me. But when I opened the front door, I froze, because sitting on my porch, tucked under the welcome mat, was an envelope. Thicker than mine, torn at the corner, my name written in Mark's handwriting, and inside, a single sheet of paper. A document I never should have seen. A document that made my knees nearly give out, because it proved something I never suspected. Something that changed the entire landscape of the last 18 years. Something that made my rage twist into something deeper, darker, and nauseating. It wasn't about Phoenix. It wasn't about the affairs. It wasn't about the payments. It wasn't even about the girl. It was about Lily. And the truth Mark had been hiding since before she was born. I sat on the stairs inside the house, because my legs wouldn't hold me. The envelope felt heavier than it should have, like the paper inside had weight far beyond ink. I unfolded it. One sheet. A DNA report header from a private lab in Phoenix. Dated 18 years ago, 3 months before Lily was born, and under probability of paternity, next to Mark's name, 0%. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Everything inside me went still, like my body knew before my mind could catch up. Mark had taken a secret paternity test before our daughter was even born. He'd known Lily wasn't biologically his since day one. But the horror wasn't the result. The horror was the note scribbled at the bottom in his handwriting. A clean slate. No obligations, no attachments, just opportunity. My stomach lurched. No attachments about his own child. The child he'd let me believe he loved. The child he let call him dad. The child he photographed, bragged about online, gave speeches about during her dance recitals, carefully curated Father of the Year moments he used to polish his image. But behind all of it, nothing, not love, not pride, not even resentment, just calculation. Because beneath the test page was another document, a contract, handwritten, signed, between Mark and the girl from Phoenix's mother, a deal. He would pay them in exchange for two things: silence about the situation in Phoenix, a statement saying she had been involved with another man at the time, someone who could be named the father if needed, and the mother agreed. That part was sickening enough, but the last clause turned my blood to ice. In the event the child survives to birth, the mother assumes full responsibility. The child is not to be brought to the attention of the father. The girl had been pregnant. Mark had reason to believe the baby could have been his. He didn't care if the baby lived or died. He only cared about protecting himself. And he used money to erase the entire situation, even arranging for another man's name to be used if it ever came up publicly. That's why he panicked when he saw my letter. Because he thought I knew the truth. He had paid off a minor's family. He had washed his hands of responsibility. He had buried the evidence. But here's the part that chilled me the most. The DNA test wasn't from my pregnancy. It was from hers. Which meant the girl in Phoenix carried a baby. A baby he knew wasn't his. Which meant the real question wasn't why he hid a test. It was what happened to that baby. I felt sick. Everything, his paranoia, his sudden unraveling, his obsession with who'd been in the house, clicked into place. He didn't think I leaked anything. He thought Lily had found something. Survived to birth. Those words kept echoing. I checked the report again. The dates lined up in a way that made something cold crawl up my spine. Lily was born 9 months after that Phoenix trip. He took the test before Lily existed. He tried to buy his way out of responsibility for another pregnancy. And when he realized Lily wasn't his, he didn't argue, didn't throw it in my face, didn't demand answers, because she wasn't supposed to matter to him anyway. She wasn't the threat. The threat was whatever had happened in Phoenix, whatever he feared was coming back. The girl, her family, the baby, the money, the people he said could bury him. That was the reason he whispered upgrade at graduation. That was the reason he left us behind like dead weight. He wasn't chasing love. He was running from something he'd done, something he'd paid to hide, something he thought was finally catching up. And Lily, sweet, innocent Lily, was collateral damage. A girl he'd let grow up believing she was loved by a man who saw her as nothing more than a convenient cover. He stayed in our lives because a perfect family photo made him look stable, respectable, normal. He used us. He used her. For image, for protection, for credibility. And the day she graduated, when he thought she no longer served a purpose, he discarded her. Discarded both of us. With divorce papers tucked inside a program. Even after everything else, this was the cruelest thing he'd ever done. Because today wasn't about betrayal or cheating or humiliation. It was about the truth. Mark never loved Lily. He only loved what she made him look like. And now that she was grown, we were liabilities. But he made one fatal mistake. He thought a DNA test would break me. He thought a hidden past would scare me. He thought guilt and fear would keep me quiet. He didn't understand this wasn't the end of the story. It was the fuse. And I had already lit it. I didn't cry. Not when I found the DNA test. Not when I realized he'd used our daughter's entire life as a prop. Not even when the last 18 years rearranged themselves in my head like broken glass. I folded the papers, slipped them into the same folder with the Phoenix files, and walked out the door. The sky was already turning blue-gray, that cold early evening color that makes everything look sharper. I drove straight to the station. Every mile felt like a step closer to something heavy but necessary. Detective Harper met me in the lobby. One look at my face, and he didn't waste time with small talk. We went straight to his office. I handed him the folder, page by page. I watched his expression shift, from concern to tension, to the sharp alertness of a man who suddenly understands the seriousness of what he's holding. "This isn't just one crime," Harper finally said. "This is a chain. A big one, I know. You're aware what happens once I file this." "Yes. And you're sure," I took a breath. "He tried to drag our daughter into something she had nothing to do with. He thinks she betrayed him. And I don't trust what he'll do now that he's losing control." Harper nodded once, the kind of nod that said he was officially switching modes, from neighborly cop to investigator. "I'll open a sealed file. It won't hit the local system yet, but I'm sending this to the Phoenix task force I consult with. Tonight," I exhaled. That was the moment everything shifted from fear to action. Before I left the station, Harper said quietly, "If you feel unsafe, we can put a patrol near your street." I shook my head. "He won't come to me tonight." "How do you know?" "Because I know where he is." And I did. Mark always hid at the same place when he panicked, the private office at his firm. No windows, back entrance. No cameras he didn't control. He thought it made him untouchable. He thought wrong. Because earlier, while he was blowing up my phone, I'd forwarded every damning document, every file, every transfer, every note to the entire board of his company. And their general counsel. And their compliance director. And their HR leads, all from an anonymous email time-stamped and backed up. I didn't include accusations. I didn't include a single subjective sentence. Just facts, dates, documents, proof. By the time I walked out of the police station, the first fallout had already begun. My phone buzzed with a number I didn't know. "Board member, we need to speak with you immediately regarding material we received concerning Mark." I ignored it. My job wasn't to explain. My job was to expose. The next call came from Harper again. "They just forwarded everything to Phoenix," he said. "The task force already flagged one of the names associated with the girl's family. Organized activity, extortion rings. Your husband wasn't lying when he said he owed people." My stomach twisted. "What does that mean for Lily and me?" "It means you did the right thing before those people reached you first." I drove home in silence, the kind where you can hear your heartbeat more than the engine. When I pulled into the driveway, there were 3 cars idling down the street. Unmarked, government plates. Harper had sent backup even though I said no. I slept for the first time in days. By morning, everything had detonated. Mark was taken into custody at his office, right in front of his partners, his staff, and his secretary. He didn't resist. He didn't fight. He didn't even speak. He looked like a man who finally realized the walls around him weren't walls, they were traps he built himself. The board suspended him. Phoenix detectives flew out for questioning. His accounts were frozen pending investigation. His mother called me 6 times, screaming. I blocked her. Alyssa quit her job and sent me a shaky text. "Thank you for saving me before he dragged me down too." But the moment that mattered came at noon, when Lily came home. She walked inside, hesitant, eyes red like she'd been crying. "Mom, what happened to Dad?" I sat her down. I didn't sugarcoat, I didn't lie, I didn't tell her the ugliest details, but I told her enough. Her face crumpled, but she didn't collapse. She didn't scream, she didn't defend him. She said in a small, heartbreakingly steady voice, "So he never loved me." I pulled her into my arms so tight she had to grip my shirt to breathe. "He loved the way you made him look," I whispered. "But I love you, that has never changed, and now he can't use you anymore." "Ever," she cried into my shoulder, but it wasn't weak, it was release. Around 5, Harper called me again. "Just so you know," he said, "the girl from Phoenix, she survived. She lives in Nevada now, she's safe. She gave a statement years ago that her family buried. We'll be trying to retrieve it." I closed my eyes, feeling something lift off my chest for the first time. After the call ended, I stepped outside onto the porch. The sunlight was warm, but the air had that faint, clean sharpness that comes after a storm finally breaks. Mark's perfect new life, destroyed before it ever began. He lost his job, his reputation, his upgrade, his freedom, his leverage, his lies, all because he thought I'd go quietly, all because he thought I mattered less than his secrets. And as I stood there, breathing fresh air for what felt like the first time in years, I realized something. The real revenge wasn't the evidence. It wasn't the investigation. It wasn't the board or the arrest or the ruins of his image. The real revenge was this. He finally had to live without the one thing he valued most, control. And for the first time since the day I married him, I felt completely, utterly free. I sent one final message to his phone, short enough to read from a jail cell. Upgraded enough for you. He never responded. He never will.